My mother was reading my emails when I walked into the kitchen that morning. She didn't even pretend she wasn't. She just looked up from my open laptop with that expression she'd perfected over 28 years, the one that said, "I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just making sure you're doing everything right." The coffee was still brewing. My bag was already packed by the door. I had a flight to catch. "Hartwell and Briggs," she said, reading the subject line out loud. "Why is a law firm emailing you at 6 in the morning?" I poured myself a cup of coffee without answering. I'd learned a long time ago that silence was the only answer that didn't give her something to pull on. "Claire." Her voice dropped into that register, the one she used in depositions. My mother had been a family law attorney for 31 years, and she never really turned it off. Not at dinner, not at Christmas, not at 6 in the morning in her kitchen. "Hartwell and Briggs is the firm that handled the Henderson acquisition last spring. Why would they be contacting you?" "Work stuff," I said. She closed the laptop, slowly, the way she closed things when she wanted you to understand a door had been shut. "You've been distracted for months," she said. "Your father and I have noticed." I thought about telling her right then. I almost did. But the coffee was hot and the kitchen smelled like the orange peel candle she burned every morning, and for just one moment, I wanted to sit in that smell for a little longer before everything changed. So I picked up my bag, kissed her on the cheek, and told her I'd call when I landed. I didn't call when I landed, but that's getting ahead of things. I should tell you about the kind of family I come from, because it matters. My father built a regional logistics company from a single warehouse in Columbus, Ohio, into something worth real money. Not generational wealth, money he'd never say that. It would sound too soft but serious, structural money. The kind of money that pays for private school and debate camp and a particular type of pressure that never announces itself because it doesn't have to. My mother never stopped practicing law, even after they could afford for her to. She said it kept her sharp. What she meant was that sitting still made her nervous, and making other people's decisions felt natural to her. My older brother went into finance. My father shook his hand at his college graduation like he was closing a deal. My younger sister was finishing her MBA. She sent my mother her grade reports without being asked. And then there was me. I had graduated from Ohio State with a computer science degree that my mother had tolerated because she'd decided I was going to be a tech lawyer, which meant I went straight from undergrad into a paralegal position at a mid-sized firm in Chicago while I studied for the LSAT. I scored high enough. I got into a good program. And for 2 years, I did exactly what was expected of me. I showed up, I billed hours, I wore the blazers, I called home every Sunday. What nobody knew was what I was doing between 11 p.m. and 2 in the morning in my apartment on the north side of Chicago. I'd started building something during my second year of law school. A workflow automation platform, the kind that small legal teams and boutique firms use to manage case documentation, client intake, deadline tracking, billing. I'd watched the inefficiency up close every single day, and I understood the problem in a way that most software engineers didn't, because I'd lived it. I knew exactly what was missing, and I knew exactly how to build it. I called it CaseThread. I want to be honest with you about the timeline, because I've seen how these stories get told and the details matter. I didn't quit my job and then magically become successful. I was already successful before I made any decisions at all. I'd been running CaseThread quietly for almost 18 months before I said anything to anyone at work. By that point, I had over 400 paying subscribers, mostly small firms and solo practitioners, and the revenue was doubling roughly every 5 months. I had a meeting with 2 different private equity firms in the first quarter of that year. Both of them wanted to acquire, not invest. My attorney, not my mother, an actual attorney I'd hired, told me the second offer was the one worth taking seriously. $9.2 million. After taxes and legal fees and the financial advisor I'd hired specifically, because I knew I needed someone to think clearly when I couldn't, I walked away with $6.8 million. It settled into a trust account on a Tuesday. I remember standing in my apartment looking at my phone and thinking that the number didn't look real on a screen. It looked like a typo. I didn't tell my family. I know how that sounds. But you have to understand, telling them would have meant explaining everything I'd done without them, everything I'd built in the hours they thought I was sleeping, and that conversation would have immediately become a conversation about what I was going to do next, which would have become a conversation about what they thought I should do next, which would have become a plan that had nothing to do with what I actually wanted. I wanted to quit the firm. I wanted to move somewhere that wasn't Chicago. I wanted to wake up in the morning without dressing for someone else's idea of who I was supposed to be. I gave my notice on a Thursday. HR was professional about it. My supervising partner shook my hand. A few people asked if I was going to another firm. I said I was taking some time off. Everyone nodded like that was something people did. I flew home to Columbus that weekend for my sister's birthday dinner. I hadn't planned to tell them then. I thought I'd have a couple more weeks close out my apartment lease, figure out where I was going. But my mother had a way of making the thing you were holding feel heavier than it actually was until you had to put it down. She brought it up over dessert. She'd been saving it. I could tell by how she asked casual, almost like she'd just remembered. I ran into Patricia Morse at the Bar Association lunch last week. She said she hadn't seen you at the firm's fundraiser. I wasn't there, I said. Obviously. She set down her fork. Are you in some kind of trouble? No. Then why weren't you there? Because I don't work there anymore. The table went quiet in that specific way that family tables go quiet, not empty silence, but pressurized silence. The kind that fills up immediately with everyone deciding whether to speak. My sister looked at my brother. My brother looked at his wine. My father put both hands flat on the table. What do you mean you don't work there anymore? My mother said. I resigned. About 10 days ago. You resigned. She said it like the word. Had a bad taste. Without talking to us. Without discussing. I'm 28, I said. I don't need to discuss my job decisions with, you needed to discuss this one. Her voice was completely level. That was the worst part. She wasn't angry, yet she was lawyering. Do you understand what it took to get you into that firm? Your father made calls. I made calls. Bob Hartley is a personal friend of ours, and he vouched for you personally. I know that. Then act like it. She stood up. Not dramatically, just efficiently. The way she ended conversations that weren't going where she wanted them. You've thrown away everything we built for you because you want to do what? Exactly? What is it that's so much more important than the career we gave you? You didn't give me a career, I said. You gave me a plan. My father had been quiet through all of it, which was worse than anything he could have said. When he finally spoke, his voice was very low. If you walk away from this, you walk away from this family's support. You understand me? You want to figure things out on your own? Then figure them out on your own. Completely. That's what I'm doing, I said. Then you can do it somewhere else. He pushed back his chair and left the room. My mother followed him. My brother and sister both looked at me with the particular expression of people watching someone else step on a landmine. I picked up my purse. I kissed my sister on the top of her head. I said happy birthday, and I left. I drove back to Chicago that night instead of staying over like I'd planned. I put on a podcast I'd been meaning to listen to, and I drove north on 71 with the windows down a little, even though it was cold. And somewhere around the hour mark, I realized I wasn't crying. I wasn't even particularly sad. I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, like a pressure behind my sternum had quietly released. I want to tell you about the house. I'd been looking at Nashville for a while, mostly because it made practical sense for where I thought I was going next. Strong tech scene, good infrastructure, manageable cost of living compared to Chicago, and something about the energy of the city felt like possibility instead of performance. I'd done the research the way I do everything, methodically and quietly, and I'd been in contact with a buyer's agent there for about 3 months before the sale of Case Thread closed. I found the house in East Nashville. It was a restored Craftsman on a tree-lined street, not enormous, not the kind of place that announces itself, but thoughtfully renovated with a big back deck and a converted garage that I immediately saw as an office. 3 bedrooms, exposed brick in the kitchen, the kind of place where you could actually think. My financial advisor had been clear. Don't put everything in real estate. Diversify. Keep liquidity. The house cost just under $900,000. I put down 30% and kept the rest spread across a diversified portfolio and a business reserve account because I already had ideas about what Case Thread 2 might look like, and I wasn't done building things. I know this doesn't sound like the kind of number that makes for a dramatic story. It doesn't have 9 digits, but here's what I want you to understand. The number was never the point. The point was that I had made choices, carefully, over years, that nobody in my family knew about. The point was that when my father said, figure it out on your own, I already had. Completely. I moved in on a Thursday in late October. My best friend drove down from Chicago with her SUV full of boxes, and we ordered pizza and sat on the floor of the empty living room, and she asked me how I felt. I said I felt like myself. She said that was the best answer I'd given to any question in at least 2 years. The first morning I woke up in that house, I made coffee and took it out to the back deck, and I sat there for a long time without checking my phone. The yard backed up to a little strip of trees that had just started turning. It was quiet. Not the performative quiet of a house where people are waiting for something, but actual quiet, the kind you have to earn. 6 weeks passed. I started consulting part-time for a legal tech accelerator, which gave me structure without giving me someone else's ceiling. I joined a co-working space downtown and met people who were building things, real things. And I came home in the evenings and cooked dinner and worked on my own ideas and watched terrible reality television without anyone making a comment about what I was doing with my time. I thought about my family. I want to be honest about that too. I thought about my mother's face at the table, not the anger, but the moment just before it, when I told her I'd resigned. There was a half second where something moved across her face that wasn't fury, wasn't strategy. It was something closer to fear. And I'd spent a lot of years not being able to tell the difference between my mother's love and my mother's control. But in that half second, I thought maybe they had always been the same thing to her, twisted together so tightly she couldn't separate them either. That didn't make it okay. But it made it something I could think about without breaking. My sister texted me a few times. Short messages. How are you settling in? I like your Instagram posts. Miss you, I texted back. We had a phone call one Sunday that was easy and careful the way conversations are when people are trying to find each other again after a rupture. She didn't mention our parents. Neither did I. My brother didn't reach out. That didn't surprise me. He had always been better at loyalty than he was at honesty, and in our family, loyalty meant staying in formation. Then one evening in early December, I was in my kitchen making pasta when my phone rang. My mother. I looked at it for 3 full rings. I thought about not answering, but I was in a good enough place by then that I could afford to pick up, so I did. Claire. Her voice was different. Not softer, exactly. My mother's voice was never soft, but there was something careful in it, a deliberateness that wasn't the usual control. I'm glad you picked up. Hi, Mom. How are you? She asked it, like she meant it, which was unusual enough that I noticed. I'm good, I said. Really good, actually. A pause. Good. That's good. Another pause. Your brother called us last week? I turned the burner down. Okay. He's in some financial trouble. She said it quickly, the way she said things she didn't want to be saying. He made some investments that they didn't go the way he projected. He's dealing with a margin call situation and there are some credit issues and he's asking for help. I waited. He's asking for a significant amount of help, she said. And your father and we've had our own year. The company has had a difficult quarter. We're not in a position to write the kind of check he needs. How much does he need? I asked. She told me. I had to set the spoon down on the counter. He came to you, I said. Not a question. He came to us first. We told him we couldn't. A pause. He asked about you. There it was. He knows you've been doing well, she said, carefully. He mentioned that you'd sold something, a company or a software program. Did he? Claire. Her voice shifted, still controlled, but something underneath it now, something almost pleading. Your brother made some mistakes. That doesn't mean. He made mistakes, I said, and now he needs someone to absorb them for him. He's your family. I know he is. Then help him. The carefulness dropped away. You have the means to help him, and you're sitting in wherever you are, and he is in real trouble, Claire. Real. Serious. Mom, I said it quietly. She stopped. Can I ask you something? She said nothing, which I took as yes. When Dad told me to figure things out on my own, I said, did he mean it? Another long pause. Because I took him at his word, I said. I figured things out on my own. Nobody helped me. Nobody made calls. Nobody vouched for me. I made something and I sold it and I built a life and I did all of it without asking for anything from this family. That wasn't a mistake I made and now need bailing out of. That was a choice I made and followed through on. I picked the spoon back up. I'm glad my brother has you too. I think you should help him as much as you can. But I'm not going to be the solution to a problem he created. Silence. I love you, I said. And I meant it, simply, without performance. Tell Dad I said hi. I hung up and finished making my pasta. I want to tell you something that surprised me about that conversation, because it's probably the part I've thought about most since. I wasn't angry when I hung up. I expected to be. I had been so braced for the feeling of it, the familiar heat that used to come with any confrontation in my family. But instead, I felt something more like clarity, like I had finally stopped translating. For my whole life, I had been running everything through a filter. What do they mean? What do they actually want? What's the right answer? What's the safe answer? And for the first time, I had just said the thing that was true and let it land where it landed. My brother texted me the next morning. I won't repeat what he said. I will tell you that I read it once, then put my phone face down on the table, finished my coffee, went for a run, and when I came back, I replied with 2 sentences. I said I hoped things got better for him, and I said my door was open if he wanted an actual relationship, not a transaction, a relationship. He didn't respond. My mother called again 2 weeks later. This one was different. It was shorter, and she didn't ask me for anything. She said she'd been thinking about what I'd said. She asked if I would consider coming for Christmas. I told her I'd think about it. She said that was fair. My father hasn't called. I don't expect him to. Not yet. Some people have to sit with things for longer. I know this because I sat with things for a long time too. I sat with the feeling of being managed instead of known, of being a projection of someone else's ambition instead of a person with my own. I sat with it for years before I did anything. I'm not going to rush his timeline. What I want to tell you about the house is not the price, or the square footage, or the way the light comes through the kitchen windows in the afternoon, though that last part is genuinely beautiful. What I want to tell you is that it's mine. Not in a legal or financial sense, though obviously that too, but in the way that matters. Every decision in that house is a decision I made. The furniture, the color on the walls in my office, the shelf of books I have always wanted to own, the second coffee maker I bought purely because I like having one on the counter and one on my desk. There is a morning routine I have now that I want to describe because I didn't have anything like it for most of my adult life. I wake up. When I wake up, which has settled into around 6:30, I make coffee. I take it to the back deck. Even in winter, I have a good jacket. I sit there for between 15 and 30 minutes, and I don't check anything. I just think, or don't think. Usually I watch the trees. Sometimes there's a red-tailed hawk that comes through the strip of woods behind the yard, and I wait for it without expecting it, which turns out to be the only way to see a hawk. Then I go inside and I work. I'm building something new. I'm not ready to talk about the details, but I'll say it's more ambitious than case thread, and it scares me a little every morning when I open the project files, which I've learned is a good sign. I have 2 people I consult with regularly, one on the technical side and one on the business side, and we meet over video twice a week. I have a financial advisor who checks in monthly and a lawyer on retainer who I actually like as a person, which I did not know was possible. I think about the version of myself who might have become a family law attorney in Columbus, Ohio. I don't think about her with contempt. I think about her with something softer. She was doing her best in a structure that was never built for her. She was trying to love people who made love feel like an obligation. She was working so hard to be chosen by the people who were supposed to choose her unconditionally. I don't need to be chosen anymore. I chose myself. It took me 28 years and approximately 1,000 late nights, writing code that nobody knew about, and one very cold drive north on 71 with the windows cracked to get here. But I got here. And the view from the back deck in December, with the frost on the grass and the coffee warm in my hands and no one waiting for me to account for my time, I would not trade it. I would not trade it for anything. A few months ago, someone who had followed my LinkedIn posts reached out. She was 23, in her second year at a firm in Cincinnati, and she said she'd been building something at night and she didn't know whether to keep going or let it go. She was scared of what her family would say. She asked if I had any advice. I wrote back. I told her the fear doesn't go away when you make the decision, so you can't wait for it to go away. I told her to get a good attorney before she talked to anyone. I told her that the people who love you for who you actually are will still love you on the other side of the choice. And the people who only loved the version of you that was useful to them, well, that's important information too. It hurts, but it's important. She wrote back 2 days later. She said thank you. She said she was going to keep building. I hope she does. I hope you do too. Whatever it is you've been building in the hours no one knows about, I hope you keep going. Not because it will make you rich, though it might. Not because it will prove anyone wrong, though it might do that too. But because the things we build in secret, in the margins of the life people assign us, are often the most honest things we ever make. Mine turned out to be worth more than anyone expected, including me.